And then, reoccurrence, 20 times, or let's just do 3 times every 1 day. We can then patch this on, let's say, the 31st. We can see what we're going to patch. We can then write, 831.91.92 to SharePoint. We refresh, we can see we have my daily tasks in here. Go to the calendar view, we can see them down here at the bottom. Hey everyone, My SharePoint Questions here, and I am Andrew Hess. So today there's a couple things I wanted to go over. One is the PowerApps conference in Orlando. I will be going there. So if we go to, let's see, PowerApps. The PowerApps conference in Orlando. I will be there, so if you'd like to say hi. I probably will do a video about which workshops and videos I'm going to attend. But I will be here, and if you want to say hi, feel free. Other than that, today I wanted to go over something that has been driving people crazy for years, and that's when we moved away from SharePoint Classic or SharePoint 2013. And in the calendar, they had it so you could do recurring list items. So let me show you. So you can technically still get there. So you can go to Site Contents, and you can do, let's see, Return to Classic. So we return to Classic and then add an app. And I'm not recommending this. I'm just saying it's possible. And you can find a calendar. I'm sure Microsoft is going to end this at some point. So there are other options. I have created my own modern calendar with SPFX. But the old calendar app is still here. Old calendar. And you can create an old calendar. I just want to show you what's missing. So if we go to this old calendar and we create a new line item, in modern SharePoint, we no longer have this reoccurrence field, right? And all this extra data here, and I'll probably zoom in here, but make this a repeating event, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. And we want to recreate this. Now I'm just going to do a piece at a time. I'm probably just going to do maybe daily, weekly, today. Maybe I'll touch into monthly if I can, but this is what we want. We want to recreate this reoccurrence. Everyone loved it. Microsoft hated it. People would say, oh, I want this to never end, no end date. And they don't realize what that would cause in the back end of SharePoint. SharePoint would display that in a JSON, and it was really hard to get to that data. It was called like an recurrence field. So Microsoft removed that, and they did it silently. And a lot of people really loved this reoccurrence. So let's recreate that in PowerApps. And I've had hundreds of people ask for this. So let's get in here. So in PowerApps, right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do it in collections, and then we'll move to SharePoint later on. So we're going to do an input, and we will have to have a date, right? So we need a date. We need a couple of text inputs. And we'll label these. This will be how many times we want it to recur. So how many times we want it to recur. And this will be the date interval. So for right now, it's just the day interval. So we'll say days. So if we come in here, if we wanted it to recur 3 times every 7 days starting on 8/14. That's what we're looking for. So I was thinking about this and I was like, okay, we need to loop through, and we need to loop through a certain amount of numbers. So I started searching Google. I came to this post here by, let's see, by Hardit Bhatia, okay? And he's collecting an item multiple times in a collection. And you can see here, right, he's putting in a number, and then he's collecting. Let me zoom in. And he's collecting, his name there 5 times. That's technically what we want, except for we want to use dates. So his first step is to do a ClearCollect right here. And he's actually doing it, however many times you want to collect. So for right now, I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to put it in a button. And this is going to be called, collect MyNumbers. And this is how many times we want people to be able to reoccur on. And in here, I'm going to paste that in, except for I'm going to remove these dots. And maybe we'll go out to 20 for now. There we go. Okay, so now we're out to 20. Now I'm just going to use his exact example. So his exact example uses this ForAll statement. ForAll, the number collection, value, yada, 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 yada. Okay? So we're going to use that exactly. And I'm going to put this in another button. And this is going to be my days. We're just going to call this button my days. Okay, so right now, let's have one gallery. And this gallery is going to be collection 1. And so if we look at his my days here, maybe if I can go back in, let's look at this a little closer. You can see he's doing his number collection. So that's the first one that we collected, the 1, 2, 3, all the way to 20. So we're saying, hey, we're going to collect that much. And then we're going to create another collection based on our label. All right. So let's put in this gallery our collection 1. I'm going to remove this picture. All right. So now if we click the button that collects our numbers and then click my days, we can see we now have it collecting recur, that's our label here, on a certain amount of times, right? So probably 7 times. So we have this a little backwards. This is my text input 1. I'm going to change this to text input 2, and we'll try it again. Oh, it did not clear. Okay, so now we're going to clear our collection 1 up here. So clear collection 1. Play again. Now it does 3, 4, 7, and then we can go all the way to 20, right? So we can go all the way to 20. All right, so now let's have it collect my date. All right, so now this button here, right now it's collecting label 1. Let's have it collect date picker 1.SelectedDate. All right, so now 3 times, let's collect my date 3 times. All right, we're getting somewhere, right? 5 times, we'll collect my date 5 times. All right, so let's keep going. So now instead of collecting the date 3 times, we want to add the days here. So that's my text, and we'll call this rename txtDays. All right, so now in our days we have 7. In my days, let's add this record. So as we're looping through, right, this is the ForAll statement. ForAll, as we're looping through this record, let's add it back to itself. Okay, so let's press play. So we can see now we're adding 1 on top of every one. So we're adding this record back on top of each other. And then we're going to multiply this record times txtDays.Text. And this, we should probably change this to a value. So value txtDays.Text. All right, so my days, boom. So 821, 828, 94. So now we're doing weekly. If we want to do 2 days, 2 days, 816, 818, 820, 822, 824. All right, so now we're collecting that correctly. You know, we can go out to, 30 days, and that would be a month, right? So monthly, it's collecting. 365, we now have yearly, it's collecting. Look at that. So we've already done a lot of the work right there. Now, when we do a SharePoint list, and we need to have 2 numbers, actually. We need to have 2 numbers. and that is start date and end date. Okay, so let's go back to my days. So I'm going to try and do this slowly. Our first number that we're collecting here is end date. The start date is going to be the same thing over again. So let's copy paste this. The start date is going to be the same date over again. So let's copy paste this. So we have start date and end date. All right. So when I click on my days, I've noticed that we're 7 days in the future. I've noticed that my count is a little off. So on CollectNumbers, I'm going to add a 0 in here. So that way when we multiply by 0 and we don't add on for the first day. So let's recalculate. Collect my days. So there's 5 reoccurrences. It starts here on 8/14. And we can see that, so we have 5 reoccurrences. That day, the next day, 5 reoccurrences. So we had to update my collect my numbers with a 0. We wanted the 0 for our scenario. All right, so if we had, 2, we could have 2 reoccurrences. We could then patch to SharePoint. So instead of doing start date and end date on the same date picker, let's create 2 date pickers. So we got start date and end date. So I'm going to rename these real quick. End date, dteEndDate. And I'll rename this one dteStartDate. We have dteStartDate in here twice. We want end date to be dteEndDate. All right. I know I'm going really fast. I'm sorry, but I'm just trying to knock this out. We now have our reoccurrence here. And let's say if we wanted it to be a day long, right? We could, then we're collecting the start date and end date. So let's add a couple of columns in here just so we know what's going on. Now, if you want to add time in here, I'm going to leave that to you. You're going to have to figure that out for now. But right now, I'm just trying to give you the basic structure so we can move on and move forward. Everyone's scenario is going to be a little bit different. But let's say maybe it's 2 days long. It reoccurs 5 times every week. There we go. We now have a 2-week long or 2-day long meeting that happens. And so if we wanted to do 8/14 twice, we can do that. All right, so now let's go to SharePoint and patch this in. All right, I'm back in SharePoint in the site contents of this site. I'm going to create new list blank. I believe we can just do blank list and we'll just call it my calendar. All right. And we're going to create a blank calendar list. Now, in order to have a calendar in SharePoint, you have to have at least 2 columns. We have to have, well, actually at least 3, but we have to have a start date and an end date also. So start date, and add another date column, end date. All right, now that we have a title, a start date and end date, we can then create a calendar view. Now for the new way to see the new calendar, we're going to come up here to our list dropdown and click create new view. All right, so we just give our calendar a name. So our calendar view, so calendar, how about my calendar view? And we change it to calendar, and we need the start date to be the start date and the end date to be the end date, and then we can just click create. Okay, so now we have a modern calendar in SharePoint. So now we want to patch here. So let's connect to the data source in PowerApps. All right, so I'm going to connect SharePoint, my SharePoint questions. And the list that we're going to be doing is my calendar, and we're going to connect. Okay, we've now connected to that calendar list. Now we're going to create a button, and this button is going to patch. All right, so in our patch button, I renamed this to patch. We're going to, ForAll, collection 1. That's our collection right down here in our gallery. ForAll collection 1. We're going to patch the name of my SharePoint list, my calendar. And we're going to do title. So we're missing one thing in our collection. On the My Days button, we've collected start date and end date. Let's add in title. And the title is going to be, we need a new text box. Let's add this in here. So this is my title. We got start, end, and now title. And I will rename this text title. All right, so now in my days, in my collection, we're going to collect title, text, title, .text. All right, so there's our equation. We're now collecting three things. We're collecting the title, the start date, and the end date. I will put this formula in my video properties. Okay, so now let's collect my number, my days, and let's add the title in here. This is my task. So now when we collect, we now have a title in here. All right, so now let's go back to our patch statement. We're back to our patch statement. When we patch the title, it's going to be equal to title. The start date is equal to start date. End date is equal to end date. Now the reason the names are all the same is because one is my SharePoint list name and the other is my collection name. So I just matched them together. So if we go to SharePoint, you see title, start date, end date. I just named them the exact same. If we go to my collection, end date, start date, title. So we just name them the same. That's why it's repetitive there. So now let's patch. We're going to patch these line items. Patch. It's thinking. It's thinking. Go back to SharePoint, hit refresh. It's now patched my tasks on each of the days in the calendar. All right. So we're starting to recreate this reoccurrence. Now we've only gone up to 20, or actually 21 because we added a 0, but we have 21 days that are possible to reoccur on. Now let's say if we wanted to do monthly, right? We could easily just type in 30 days. You know, maybe your users will understand that, but if you want to add more to it, of course we can add checkboxes, you know, yearly. We could add a checkbox in here. Let's see if I can do this quickly. I know this is going to take a little bit more time, but let's see if I can do this quickly. All right, so I'm just thinking how to do this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this text box and I'm going to change it to a drop down. All right, and the drop down items are going to be days, weeks, months. All right, so we now have a drop down that is days, weeks, or months. Okay, so now in my days, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a case statement. It's called case in some languages, or it's called a switch, but I'm just going to do this real quick. Switch. We're going to create a switch statement up here. So switch the drop. Let me rename my drop down here. Drop date type. For our switch, we're going to say if drop date type dot selected dot value, if it's equal to days, comma, we're going to do what we did before, comma again at the end. If it's equal to months or weeks, I'm going to copy this over again, comma, we're going to do this, and let's just format the text for now. So if it's equal to days, we're going to do what we did before. If it's equal to weeks, we're going to do that times 7. Times 7. Let's see what happens. Let's see if I have this right. I'm trying to do this really quick. Let's see if I have this right. If it's equal to weeks, we want to reoccur 2 times. Collect my days. We now have it working every week. So every 2 weeks, it reoccurs. Every 3 weeks, it reoccurs. Okay, now let's do months. So we'll add to our patch statement. We'll copy all this. I'll add a comma. Change this to months. 30. 30. All right, so now every month we reoccur twice. Every 2 months it happens. Every 3 months it happens. So if we have it reoccur 5 times every 1 month, we can see every month it reoccurs. So we've now technically recreated a lot of that. Now we didn't do the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, have it reoccur on every 4th Thursday or anything. I'm going to leave that up for you to build. We've done a lot of the work. Now, there are lots of little tiny things in calendars that maybe you want to work out, like you only want weekdays, or you only can post Monday through Friday. I'm going to leave that up to you. There's a lot more to think about. Maybe I'll come back to this and I'll touch on things like that, but there's a lot of calculations with months, weeks, days that we don't think about, leap years. There's lots of little things in there. Every month is 30, 31. Then sometimes you have a month with 28. So, you have to think about that. But for right now, for sure, the days and weeks works perfectly. So every, week, every 2 weeks, reoccur 5 times. We want to write this to SharePoint. So every 2 weeks, boom, 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 we can then write to SharePoint. There's lots of things we could do, but I just wanted to show you the basic structure here. So collect my numbers. We could easily put this on our on visible of our screen. So every time someone sees this screen, it's going to collect our 0 through 20. And then, reoccurrence, 20 times, or let's just do 3 times. Every 1 day, we can then patch this on, let's say, the 31st. So that's our start and end date. We can see what we're going to patch. We can then write, 8/31/91/92 to SharePoint. We refresh, we can see we have my daily tasks in here. Go to the calendar view, we can see them down here at the bottom. So I just wanted to show, how you could do this. I was doing this video on Sunday. And I know this question keeps coming up more and more and more. And maybe I'll keep designing this app until we have more perfection. But this is the start. This is the basic start to this app. And we could put this directly in SharePoint if we wanted. If we wanted this to show up on the new item right here, we could put that Power App there if we wanted to in this window. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's been watching, liking, subscribing. Hopefully these videos help. I will put my equations here. I will put my equation in the description of the video. Hopefully it generates some ideas for you. This is not a complete app, but this is the start. And there's lots of little things in here that you can learn. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. This is My SharePoint Questions, and I am Andrew Hess.